Hello, teacher Claudia. Today, Daisy and I are going to present part of Chapter 4, which is Popular Methodology. In this first section, we are going to explore some key concepts and several important methods in language teaching. To begin with, let's clarify some important terms. An approach. An approach is a theory about how languages are learned. For example, a communicative approach. We have also structural approach. It's about how languages are learned. Method. A method is a system of practices based on that approach, like grammar translation or CLT that we are going to see later. A procedure. A procedure is the sequence of steps in a lesson. So they are lesson steps. And a technique. A technique basically is a specific activity, such as a role play, a drill, or a game. So as we can see, we move from theory to practice step by step. Now that we understand the basic terms, let's take a look at some historical methods. Historically, three main methods were very influential. We have the grammar translation. The grammar translation method focuses on grammar rules and translation. But the thing here is that it didn't really teach communication. We have the audiolingual method that used repetition and drills to build habits. The thing in here that it was very or extremely mechanical. The situational method, they taught vocabulary and grammar in meaningful situations like going shopping or eating in a restaurant. And finally, the half method is the silent way. And here, the teacher speaks very little, and the student discovered the language almost by themselves. Now, moving on, in the 1970s, a new approach became dominant, which is the communicative language teaching. Its main goal is the real communication, where in here, the fluency is considered more important than accuracy. So teachers use activities like a role play, like debates, like pair work. And a variation of this is the teaching on block, where the teachers don't really rely too much on textbooks. So instead of that, they work with real conversation and students' idea. And closely connected to the CLT, we have another modern methodology that is task-based learning. Here, the students uses the language to complete meaningful tasks. And we have a cycle. We have the pre-task, we have the task cycle, and the language focus. For example, as students can plan a trip together. And while doing that, they practice the target language in a natural way. And next, we have the lexical approach that this was developed by Michael Lewis. And this method focuses on vocabulary and specifically in chunks or fixed expressions like common expressions and collocations. So as you can see on the presentation, like I don't mind, on the other hand, by the way, and the idea of this is that speaking with chunks makes students sound more naturally, more fluently than just learning isolated grammar rules. In addition to these, there are also humanistic methods, which focus on students' emotions and motivation. Some examples of these are the communicate language learning, where the teacher, as it says, is not seen as an authority, but as a guide. We have the Suggestipedia, with which the teacher here focuses on music, focuses on having a relaxed environment. Also, we have the silent way that we see before, where the students here, they are independent and the teacher speaks very lowly. And also, finally, we have the TPR, the total physical response, where students learn by moving, by responding physically, like standing up or opening the door. And this one last is specifically used with children. And let's take a look at the PPP, which is production, practice, and production. So, the PPP model is a classical lesson structure. We have the presentation stage, which the teacher introduces the language. Then, after this, we have the practice stage where the students do control exercises like filling in the blanks or repeating phrases. And in the production, finally, the students use the language freely, like creating their own dialogues. So now that we know about all of these methods and techniques, let's see what happens in the practice field. So, what do teachers do?
Okay, as we've seen so far, there are plenty of methodologies that we as teachers can use. So that makes us think, which method is the best? What approach should I use? Well, so we've seen it. There's no perfect methodology for teaching languages. Every classroom is different and every group of students has different needs. So that's why us teachers have to adapt and combine several techniques and methods instead of just following. So what teachers do? In practice, teachers are flexible. We have to balance theory and practice. So we have to decide what works best for our students. For example, let's take that a teacher has to teach about vocabulary. In this case, the teacher will use a communicative activity. But in another case, in another moment, the teacher will have to give a grammar structure topic. Okay? In this case, the teacher will use a grammar drill. So, as we've seen, it all depends on the context and the lesson that we are teaching. So, this leads us to the idea of the post method era. What happens here? This means going beyond one method. Today we have the freedom of choosing from different methodologies or even make a mixture of them in order to make the best teaching scenario for our students. Always we have to always consider our students' culture, their background, and learning styles. It is not about just following rules, but about adapting creatively. Now, we have learned about this, what we have to do, and the methods that we can use. We can use a lot of them. But let's talk about another thing that could be the course book. Now, the material that we use in our classrooms, we know that most of schools tend to use course books because they're easy to work with, and also because this book, gives a syllabus for teachers that they have to follow for their class. But with these kind of materials, they have downsides and their pro side. On the positive side, we can see that they provide a great structure and they give us a clear progression. And also, they give us a ready to make activities or something that the students can do in the moment. But on the negative side, what happens is that they can be a little bit rigid and that sometimes they don't match our students' reality. That's why it is important to adapt the course book to our necessities and that of our students. If we feel that something does not feed on the topic or that it is boring, the learners can get bored of how this topic is portrayed, we can modify it or even we can bring our own material. We have to be very resourceful, okay? So in this case, course books are not a bad tool. They are very great aid for us teachers, but we have to understand, we have to know which ones are the most useful ones for us, and more importantly, for our students, as they are the ones that will use it the most and the ones that will learn the content in it. So we can now, can we think about the future knowing that with each passing day, technology is increasing more and more, right? So what happens in the teaching field? It will be no excuse. It will be not a surprise that teaching will have to combine itself with technology. So we will have a more flexible methodology, okay? In this case, we know teachers will always keep combining methods. In this case, with technology, they will just add it to the mixture. Now, instead of course books, learners will have or will be looking information online. We have to know that the focus will always be on them. Okay, but the thing is that we always have the authentic communication between the teacher and the student. The only difference here is that we will see a more autonomy from the learners, where students will be the ones that will play the active role and teacher will just act as guides. Summarizing that all that we've learned so far, we can conclude that teachers should not rely just on one methodology, as it is very restricting for language learning. Also, that methodological choices must be learners focused, as well as all the material used, be it course books, activities, and other things, they will have to be designed or they have to be designed with students in mind, as they are the main character of learning. So that was all for this chapter, for this video. This was chapter number 4 about popular methodology. Thank you so much, teacher. Bye. See you another day.